Hello and welcome to Sci-Fi Night Light, where I talk about random topics that somehow relate to sci-fi and horror. So, we're finally back with a new video.
Oh my god, we're back again!
For those who missed it, I made a little return announcement yesterday. A link to that video is in the description. So, it's 2019 and we witnessed the end to one of the biggest TV events in recent history. The last season of Game of Thrones. Which was about as well received by fans as Nicolas Cage's to bees.
Oh, no, not the bees! Not the bees! Ah! Open my eyes! My eyes! Ah! Ah!
Terrible writing, nonsensical plots. It was unintentionally hilarious and horrifying.
What the fuck is this?
So, with such a horrific disaster on their hands, HBO actually followed up with something equally fitting: Chernobyl. The series was created and written by Craig Mazin, who's written films like Scary Movie 3 and The Hangover Part 2, as well as directing films like Superhero Movie and wait, what the fuck? Is this the right writer? Okay, talk about a total departure from straight up crap cinema then. The series is directed by Swedish director Johan Renck, who has been a very well respected commercial and music video director for a long time, but who's also directed episodes of hit series like Breaking Bad, The Walking Dead, Vikings, and Bates Motel. While stylized, the miniseries of just 5 episodes very accurately follows the real-life events surrounding the Chernobyl disaster of 1986, where one of the reactors in a nuclear power plant located in the former Soviet Union, present-day Ukraine, exploded, causing a catastrophic turn of events that directly killed thousands of people and affected, well, it's kind of hard to say, but hundreds of thousands at the least.
It's almost certainly the most severe accident that has ever taken place in the short history of civilian nuclear power.
Many people still to this day suffer from cancer and other health issues directly related to the Chernobyl disaster. Even as far away as in the northern and central parts of my home country of Sweden, people were affected and still deal with the effects of it today. Many people died from disease many years after the disaster, and many children were born with birth defects due to radiation. It was a truly catastrophic event that could have been much, much worse, and it ended up showing many sides of humanity, something we'll get into later. In the TV show, we follow a variety of characters, from power plant workers to firefighters to soldiers and other characters involved, but mostly real-life scientist Valery Legasov, played by Jared Harris, and politician Boris Sherbina, played by Stellan Skarsgård, and another scientist, Ulana Komyuk, played by Emily Watson, joins as well. We see how they tried to investigate the disaster and find out what caused it. It may sound a little stale, stiff, and uninteresting, but that's where you'd be very wrong. This show is actually terrifying. After a flat-out intense opening, with a fantastically dark and brooding soundtrack and excellent cinematography, we shortly after get thrown right into the start of a disaster right at the Chernobyl power plant. And as you can imagine from any nuclear disaster, things go from bad to worse real quick.
Comrade Dyatlov! Comrade Dyatlov!
What just happened?
I don't know. There's a fire in the turbine hall.
Just containing the disaster is hard enough, and the fallout afterwards is way worse, and every single attempt to do something is met with deadly results. From the very start, the tone of the show is very dark and horror-like. The radiation itself comes off as this unknown, constantly growing, and infinitely powerful entity. Its destruction digs deep, is lasting, and simply destroys life. One scene that highlights the true catastrophic dangers of radiation is when they're trying to put out a fire at the plant by dropping sand over it, and, well, poor helicopter pilot. I mean, the radiation radiation itself is almost like some kind of Lovecraftian being, so much more powerful than humanity, but without having the slightest concern or even acknowledgement of us. Sounds a bit like an invisible Cthulhu, doesn't it?
And it will not stop. Not in a week, not in a month. It will burn and spread its poison until the entire continent is dead.
The true horror, though, comes from what is time and time again proved to be the most horrific element of any scary film or series: reality. Series creator Craig Mazin went through tons of research to make the series as accurate as possible, and while there were some artistic liberties taken, overall it is pretty realistic, and you can listen to the podcasts that accompany every single episode to find out what they did to translate real-life events to the small screen.
We did speak to people who were there as liquidators, and of course we did have a lot of first-person accounts.
The effects of this disaster had on the people and wildlife of the area and beyond was truly catastrophic, highlighted in episode 3, where we visit some of the characters who were at the power plant in the first episode, and the downright horrendous effects the radiation has had on these poor people.
I did everything right. I did everything right.
The horror also comes from the Soviet Union's stubborn and arrogant attitude to the problem, willing to risk lives simply not to come off as weak, not shying away from spying on their own employees, not to make sure that they do a good job, but to make sure they don't speak of the incident to anyone.
What is everyone gonna hear?
I'm with the official Chernobyl Commission. I've been authorized by Valery Legasov. You can check this. My name is Ulana.
We know who you
Hom-
are. What is everyone gonna hear?
And when we run out of robots to try and remove radioactive material, well, they are, of course, forced to resort to humans instead.
Do you understand your mission as I have described it? Yes, General. These are the most important 90 seconds of your lives. Commit your task to memory, then do your job.
Sure, the show is stylized and with flat-out fantastic cinematography can at times make it feel a little less real, but the reality of the situation is constantly there, staring right back at you. The show took some minor liberties like condensing several real-life scientists into one character, which obviously does make the plot a bit easier to follow, and most of these changes are actually very clearly acknowledged as well. We see how powerless humans are to the horrors of radiation. We see what it does to loved ones, to people who are simply at the wrong place at the wrong time, and perhaps most devastatingly to myself, what happens to all the poor animals as well. Yeah, I'm not ashamed to say episode 4 made me cry. While I've probably made this sound like the most depressing thing since Uwe Boll's career, there is a tonal silver lining as well. Many of the characters head straight into what is certain death, if not right away, then slowly and agonizingly over the course of several years. They sacrifice themselves for what at the end of a realistic day literally saved the Earth. While we see greed, pride, gross negligence, and many other dark aspects of humanity, we also see how selfless and altruistically some people were as well. In many ways, people did band together for the greater good, despite many of them knowing it could very well kill them. Chernobyl was a fantastic series. It rides the line between stylized, horrific, and depressing, but also courageous, selfless, and beautiful aspects of humanity. Much like a power plant can be damn near world-ending, but also power a city and all its hospitals and schools. The show is fantastically made and superbly acted. The soundtrack, direction, editing, everything is simply on point. However, perhaps most importantly is how some of the ways the duality of man is reflected in all the characters we follow in the series, from our most selfish to our most heroic sides. When we stare into the abyss of potential endless radioactive destruction, it eventually starts staring back into us, showing us who we really are, which is something just as powerful as the nuclear power plants themselves. But at the end of the day, what made this show truly horrific was just knowing that no matter how many horrible things we would see in this show, what happened in real life was actually much, much worse. So that about does it for this episode of Sci-Fi Night Light. We hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about the show Chernobyl in the comments below. I'm really glad to be back, really looking forward to reading the comments again. And as always, I'll catch you guys next time.
3.6 Rontgen. I'm told it's the equivalent of a chest x-ray.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my god, stop your fucking lying.
You're going to Chernobyl. Do you know what's happened there?
We dig up coal, not bodies.